You are Locked On Ole Miss, your daily podcast on the Ole Miss Rebels. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Thanks for making the Locked On Ole Miss podcast your first listen every day. We're free and available wherever you get your podcast, including YouTube. We're part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every single day. Hello, I'm Stephen Willis from the Locked On Ole Miss podcast, and I'm joined by Tom Vanderford like I always am every Saturday morning. And Tom, it is an interesting situation because Ole Miss is signing running backs and running backs and running backs and maybe even some running backs.
I don't think you can ever have enough. I think obviously that's Lane's feelings too. We don't really know what happened in spring practice, so that's always something to consider. I know Diggs is injured. Don't know if anything else happened that we're not aware of, but I would rather have too many running backs than not enough.
You know, let's talk about the original ones. You know, the Ulysses Bentley IV, he was injured all spring. Anybody that had a bump at all did not practice this spring. That's the way this worked, by the way. So nobody be freaked out about that.
Exactly.
But Jacory, I've heard differing things on him, but until he produces in the game, he is going to be an unknown quantity. Logan Diggs obviously got hurt in his bowl game, so he is going through ACL stuff. And normally, if we're just going to be honest with that, players might come back, but they're not 100% right until about 18 months after the injury. So keep that in mind as well. That may have been more of a 2025 type play, but Ole Miss brought in Jacory, Croskey, Merritt from New Mexico. Now, this is an interesting situation, and it could be just sour grapes from Arizona. But if you look at stat lines and certain like that, I don't understand eligibility. I could just look at a stat sheet and tell you exactly what a player was. Right now, I cannot do that because everything, when you look at his, says it should be up, but Ole Miss says he should be fine once he gets his grad transfer and all that. So that's another reason not to overreact to Ole Miss signing a bunch of backs, because this is a situation that in years past, the NCAA comes back in the third week of August and says, oh, no, he's not eligible. And you were counting on this player, and that is something that Ole Miss has to be wary of, I guess.
Oh, I completely agree. And like I said, we don't have all the pieces to the puzzle, but our staff does. And Lane Kiffin, this is not his first rodeo. And we've mentioned many times before on this podcast, he's treating this like he's in the league. He knows how many backs he needs to have to go in the fall. And I'm just trusting him.
Yeah, and he brought in Henry Parrish Jr., or our guest brought him back, I should say. He's been the leading rusher for Miami the last 2 years, 100 carries, 625 yards. His numbers were remarkably similar to his time at Ole Miss. And I think it's absolutely funny that Henry Parrish Jr. played 2 years with Matt Corral, has never played with Jackson Dart. And it feels like Jackson Dart's been here for 10 years.
It does, but that's okay. That's okay. I really think that if he can get healthy, Jackson had a lower leg injury, and if he can get good and healthy, he may be the best quarterback in the country.
Yes. So those are the two running backs in the transfer portal in this spring that Ole Miss has committed already. These are players that are supposedly already in the boat. I mean, save your Tyler Barron jokes, but it is what it is. But Ole Miss isn't done. Ole Miss had a visit from Trent Howland from Indiana. He is a bruiser. He is a thumper. He's 6'3", 240 pounds, and he was like the third prong attack in replacing Quinshon Judkins. If you go back to my shows earlier in the week where I was talking about replacing Quinshon in the aggregate, this would be another way for Ole Miss to do that. Now, he's taking other visits right now, and the reason I'm not so sure about him is another player popped up as well. But he is a good running back and could fill an absolute role in this Ole Miss offense.
Oh, I agree. But there's so many people out there, the Miami of Ohio back that was committed to Mississippi State. I think I read where he's reopened his recruit.
He's decommitted. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So he was pretty good too. So, we did the kid that was from Toledo, did he ever find a home?
I think he's going to end up at Kentucky. I think Ole Miss is out of it for them. Damian Martinez, the running back that I did a couple of shows on, is going to end up at Miami.
Yeah.
There is one more option, I think. Well, actually, there's two more options, but I'm not allowed to say one of the names of the players. But Dylan Edwards was a, quote, running back. And I got air quotes up right now for those that are listening in the audio broadcast. Dylan Edwards is a Dexter McCluster type player and extremely excited. He ended up 76 carries, 321 yards, 1 touchdown. Not everybody is going to be excited by that. But when you look at this player, he's about 5'9". He's about 170, 175 pounds. He's a true Dexter McCluster, a Jeff Scott, a Noel Devine type running back. And nationally, there's a lot of chatter of him towards Ole Miss. And this player in Lane Kiffin's toy box, he could be so dangerous.
It's funny you bring that up. Many of us remember back when Ed Orgeron and Lane Kiffin came to Oxford on one Saturday afternoon, and basically Mr. McCluster beat him almost by himself. I think the famous quote was Lane turned to Orgeron and said, "Hey, I need you to get me one of those."
Yeah, Orgeron's like, I did get him.
Yeah, exactly.
But yeah, this is a high-level player. Now, I don't want everybody to think of this player as a running back. Do not think of Dylan Edwards as a running back. So don't look at this to where Ole Miss is going to sign 4 running backs in the transfer portal. That's the reason whenever you look up in the box, I've got running back in quotations, because essentially on the program, he's listed as a running back, but he's not really a running back. He's an offensive weapon. If you look at him last year catching the ball, 36 catches, 299 yards, 4 touchdowns, receiving. It says carries, but it's catches. And this is a situation with Dylan Edwards. He is that offensive weapon. Whenever you see this player, you see Dexter McCluster, which Lane Kiffin watched that happen in Oxford, Mississippi in 2009.
Yep.
Noel Devine, the best high school football film I have ever laid eyes on. These are explosive, exciting players and a chance to change games for you. I referred to him on yesterday's podcast as he might be a luxury player, but he might be the best luxury player of all time.
Oh, I'm completely all in on what you're saying. Well, in our offense, Lane loves that jet sweep. And, this kid in the slot, running the jet sweep, running in different packages in the backfield, I think it's a home run.
Thanks again for making the Locked On Ole Miss podcast your first listen. When we come back, we'll talk about the basketball program, and Jamin Brakefield is officially back for the Ole Miss Rebels. We've all been there, either as a player or a fan. It's halftime, and the scoreboard's not looking good. You're feeling low. You're not sure if your team can pull out the win. That's when you dig deep, lift your head up, and you say to yourself, it's time to get back into this game, pull off some bank heist, and take as much of my friend's money as I possibly can. That's right. The smash hit mobile game, Monopoly Go, lets you compete with your friends to get the most riches and the biggest empire. It's the Monopoly you love, but on the phone, anytime, anywhere, with tons of new twists, including leaderboards to compare your progress with your buddies. You can play on countless dynamic Monopoly boards. I mean, you can even play on the freaking moon. You can make your friends bankrupt by smashing their landmarks with a wrecking ball. And of course, you can charge them rent for landing on your properties. I mean, how many of us have been landing on boardwalk and you're like, please don't do that. We all know how that feels. You can do that to your friends as well. You can even work with your friends to crack open community chest in tournament and get extra rewards and climb the leaderboard. So get back out there, put on your game face, and download Monopoly Go. It's now free on the App Store and Google Play. Passion, drive, and patience, the formula for winning championships, is also what keeps your ride or die alive. eBay Motors has everything you need to maintain your vehicle and level it up to peak performance. Superchargers, roof racks, exhaust kits, LED headlights, and so much more. Whether you're into speed, power, or style, eBay Motors has got you covered. And with over 122 million parts, for your number one ride or die, you'll always find exactly what you're looking for. Because with eBay's Guaranteed Fit, your part is guaranteed to fit your ride every time or your money back. Because with eBay Motors, you're burning rubber, not cash. With all the parts you need and the prices you want, it's easy to make your car the MVP and bring home those huge wins. Keep your ride or die alive. ebaymotors.com. Eligible items only. Exclusions apply. eBay's Guaranteed Fit is only available to U.S. customers. Are you watching Fox Sports or ESPN on your TV all day and you have to turn down the volume because of all of that screaming and shouting? Well, make the switch to Locked On Sports today. It's a free 24/7 sports streaming channel programmed for you each and every single day to bring you the biggest stories without all of that screaming. Locked On Sports today brings you can't miss analysis, opinions, news, streaming, all on YouTube or the free Amazon Fire TV channels app. It's part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. All right, Tom. Let's move over to basketball a little bit. And yesterday it came out that Jamin Brakefield is officially coming back. Now, we all kind of knew that he was, because he mentioned before senior night that he has not played his last game in the Pavilion. So that either means he's going to be at Ole Miss or he's going to be at another school playing at Ole Miss. I mean, that's really the only way you can do that. But Jamin Brakefield is coming back. I think he has a chance to be a really good stretch four, in the fact that he can be a luxury piece that comes in off the bench and gives you a change of pace from Malik Dia and Michael Brown-Jones.
Oh, I agree. I think he is a luxury piece. He provides depth, just like you said, depth off the bench. But I am shocked at what we're bringing in from the portal. Hats off to Coach Beard. I really like the kid from Virginia Tech. I like those forwards that we got, and I'm looking forward to next year.
Yeah, Sean Badula is the kid from Virginia Tech. He averaged 16.4 points a game, 4.3 rebounds, and 4.6 assists. This was a big get for Chris Beard. Now, we all talk about Dre Davis coming in from Seton Hall and Devin Smith coming in from Sam Houston, he's actually never played in the Pavilion, but he's played a game at Ole Miss, and that's because he was with Sam Houston and he was in the Tad Pad game.
Right.
So that's kind of interesting as well. And then, of course, the two big men coming in. And Ole Miss is not really done. There's rumors that Papa Isaacs from the Texas Tech Red Raiders is getting close to a decision. I think Ole Miss and Creighton and St. John's, they're all in on this point guard out of Texas Tech. So we'll see how that goes as well. It's interesting. Chris Beard saw last season that Ole Miss did not have a point guard, a true point guard, and Ole Miss did not have a true big man scorer, and Chris Beard is rectifying both of those things.
He sure is. And we, our two biggest guys on the team, Sharp and Cisse, I've never seen anybody so afraid of grabbing a rebound in my life.
We were allergic. Ole Miss was allergic to loose balls last year.
Yeah.
They were. It's absolutely nuts. And it's a situation where I'm interested to see, because I don't think they're done. They're close to done. If you look at what their roster is, that somebody has to get in the portal for somebody to come out of the portal.
Right.
So I think a lot of that is going to depend on whether or not Pop Isaacs pulls the trigger or something like that. So we will pay attention to what is going on. Now, let's change the subject real quick to a little bit sadder thing. On Thursday night, Ole Miss got run-ruled by Alabama. Cool moment when TJ McCants came back and got a standing ovation. Props to the Ole Miss baseball fans for that. But Ole Miss baseball is just not in a good place. It's a math problem at this point for Ole Miss to do, to even make the SEC tournament probably. Yeah,
it's sad. This is the second year in a row, and third year really, if you count that. It took us a while to get hot there at the end, and
again, that Kevin Graham injured And then the team got worse, and he came back and the team got better.
Kevin Graham was the catalyst that we needed when he came back. And if you look at the games that season, it was obvious. I'm going to say him coming back and us changing our best pitcher from a closer to a starter, that helped a whole lot as well.
Yeah, we'll see what happens. Ole Miss, by the time people watch this, we'll know if Ole Miss even has a chance to win two. But if Ole Miss loses on Friday to lose the series with Alabama, like I said, it becomes a real math problem to do anything, because it's going to require you to win a series against Texas A&M, who's potentially the best team in the country, or win a series in Baton Rouge. And it's just going to be really hard. And hey, going to the Plains in Auburn next week is not going to be easy. So the question becomes, what does Ole Miss do with their baseball program moving forward?
Man, I don't know. In my new job, I work with a guy that's Brandon Johnson's big buddy, that went to Ole Miss at the same time, and they're big buds and talk all the time. And there's a guy that I work with that he's in the Diamond Club, and I divert to the Diamond Club guy a lot. He's an older guy like me, and he said, I understand people wanting change, but he said, before he got to Ole Miss, we were horrible. and I understand where he's coming from, but the SEC is just a different animal now in baseball. And to compete in the SEC, you just have to have certain things that we're lacking. I've heard this from tons of baseball fans. They're adamant that we need a pitching coach. And I know Coach Bianco is
we do have a pitching coach. It's Mike Bianco.
I know. Yeah. But they want an external away from the head coach, pitching coach. And I don't get that, but I just think we've had some bad luck, man. I'm not trying to, say Coach B is washed up, because we've just had some really bad luck with pitchers.
Yeah, and the injuries probably mounted a little bit, and the situation with Austin Simmons hurting his elbow on Thursday night. I talked to somebody that said the everything is intact, but the MRI, they're still waiting on results for that. But at least that's good to know, because that means there's not a complete tear potentially.
Right. Exactly. Yeah. Exactly. Of course, I'm not Austin Simmons' father, but if I was, I'd be like, dude, you've thrown your last pitch.
Yeah, it's a situation. Get ready for football season. And Lane Kiffin probably called over and said, hey, you've thrown your last pitch this spring. Shut it down.
Yeah.
And he's probably not wrong, because the reality with Austin Simmons is he has a chance to be the backup quarterback in the fall. And the backup quarterback in the fall, that is a big step for somebody that's going to try and win the job in the spring for the next year.
Exactly. And he's in my opinion, from listening to everybody that has had something to share on him, he's a generational talent.
Yeah.
At quarterback.
Yeah, and he should not be put in with arm injuries and everything like that in a game where you're down 8 runs or something like that you weren't going to come back and win. I don't care how competitive the kid is. He shouldn't have been in the game in that situation.
Oh, I completely agree. And I don't know this for a fact. I just know it's true. I would think that Lane Kiffin and Coach B had a little talk.
Yeah.
Because, he is on a football scholarship.
Mm-hmm. Football gets priority. He did not miss one single practice of football practice this whole baseball season. Not one. And that's because he's a football player, everyone. He might be a left-hander that throws 95 miles an hour from the left-handed side. I get that. But at the end of the day, he's a football player, and he wants to be a football player. If you ask Austin Simmons why he came to Ole Miss, it was because of Lane Kiffin in football, not because of anything baseball related. He's a football player that plays baseball, not vice versa.
Exactly.
So we'll see about that, how it goes on. I think Ole Miss Baseball is at a crossroads right now, and you have to decide what you want to be. You have to decide if it's worth it to become what that is from where you are, and we'll see exactly how that goes. Anyway, thanks again for making the Locked On Ole Miss podcast your first listen every day. We're free and available wherever you get your podcast, including YouTube. We're part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every single day. Tom Vanderford joining the show like he always does every week. Tommy, what have you got going on this weekend?
Oh, dude, I'm just going to try to relax, lay back, hopefully watch some Ole Miss baseball.
Yeah. All I know is the NFL draft might be the most overrated, fake, rehearsed spectacle in the history of TV. It might as well be the Academy Awards at this point, and they made something that was kind of cool to watch when Chris Berman and Mel Kiper Jr. and they were doing it at Radio City Music Hall and all that, into this giant spectacle where it's just unwatchable.
It is. It's to be honest with you, I haven't even watched it. Mm-hmm. I've been keeping up with it on Twitter.
Yeah. That's all you have to do.
Yeah. And just pulling for our Rebels.
Yeah. And everybody that's freaking out or whatever about Ole Miss players not getting drafted, the players that are going to get drafted all came back to school. So next year, this is going to be a completely different story. I will say this, by completely ignoring the NFL draft this year, as far as on titling and all that, my viewership in April has gone up 100 to 150%.
Oh, yeah. Hey, life as well. And let me tell you, I think we'll get some Rebels drafted in the late rounds. Mm-hmm. And I know for a fact there are going to be some kids that weren't even true starters that are going to get a shot at the league through free agency.
Yeah, and of course, Tom, we're all rooting for Ashanti.
Of course.
Yeah. Yeah, we are all rooting for him. The resident Locked On Ole Miss favorite linebacker.
That's right.
Hopefully he moves on. Anyway, thanks again, Tom, for coming on the show. We'll see you next week, bud.
Yes, sir. Hotty toddy.